"This isn't your house anymore." That's what my mother's new husband said before his fist cracked across my face. The same porch where my father once taught me how to measure wood now smelled of cheap beer and betrayal. My mother stood behind him, frozen, her hand gripping the doorframe like it could keep her from choosing sides. 11 years away, and somehow I was the intruder in my own home. I didn't fight back. I just looked at him, calm and steady, while his rage filled the silence. Because what he didn't know was that I already owned everything behind that door. What would you do? Walk away in silence? Or take back what your father built with his own hands? When I walked away from Blackwater Cove 11 years ago, I swore I wasn't coming back. I stuffed everything I owned into 2 suitcases, boarded the last train out of Portland, and told my reflection in the window that I was done chasing old memories. I was 21 then, a brand new architect, hungry to prove I could stand on my own. Crestmont seemed like the place I could do that. Tall buildings, tight deadlines, clients who treated my designs like scripture. For a while, the rush of the city helped drown out the sound of the ocean I grew up next to. But no city can drown out guilt forever. My father, Thomas Mercer, had been a craftsman to his core. He built boats with his hands, shaped dreams out of wood, and lived by simple rules. Measure twice, cut once, love without limits. His workshop sat right at the shoreline, where pine trees leaned toward the water. He passed away before he could expand the shop, before the plans we sketched together ever became real. And when he died, my mother, Evelyn Mercer, slowly fell apart. First, she sold his tools. Then she let go of his stories. Piece by piece, she let his memory fade. When Carl Rourke, a man who called himself an investor, came along and offered to modernize everything, I didn't argue. I was young and tired of feeling like the only one keeping the family together. Leaving felt like the only way to protect myself. I thought distance meant safety. I was wrong. Even while I was in Crestmont, I kept paying the property taxes and maintenance bills every year. It was my way of keeping the workshop alive, even from far away. I convinced myself it was enough. I didn't know Carl was using my absence to twist everything, telling my mother that I didn't care, that my distance was proof of indifference. Then one day, an email appeared after nearly 3 years of silence. The subject simply read, "Workshop." The message was short, cold, and final. She and Carl had decided to sell. "It's time to move on," she wrote, as if grief came with an expiration date. She wanted my signature to make things simple. Their offer? $10,000 for the entire legacy of the man who dedicated 30 years to perfecting his craft. I read it again and again. My chest didn't tighten. It felt hollow. This had Carl written all over it. Fast sale, fast cash, no discussion. I closed my laptop and whispered one word to myself. No. Not to them. To myself. Because the workshop wasn't just real estate. It was proof that craftsmanship is worth more than profit. And if they wanted to wipe my father's name off that land, they'd have to go through me first. The next morning, the plane descended through heavy gray clouds and the coastline appeared, sharp, cold, achingly familiar. Blackwater Cove hadn't changed, still stubborn, still quiet. The taxi driver didn't talk much. He hummed to old country music as pine trees rushed by the window. Every mile made my chest heavier. When we turned onto the gravel road, my stomach knotted. The house was there, but wrong. My father's carved sign, Mercer Marine Company, handcrafted boats since 1978, was gone. In its place hung a cheap vinyl banner, Rourke Marine Design. The shutters flaked, the porch lights flickered, the yard looked abandoned. I stepped out, tightened my coat against the cold, and rolled my suitcase up the steps. My hand was near the doorknob when it swung open. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered, face tired, smile strained. She said, "Adrian Mercer," softly, as if unsure I was real. Behind her, a shadow appeared. Carl, mid-30s, dressed like a wannabe executive. The smell of beer hit me before his voice did. Well, look who finally came home, he sneered. The runaway daughter. I'm here to talk about the workshop, I said. He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. The workshop? You mean my business. He stepped forward, chest out, blocking the doorway. This isn't your house anymore. Everything froze. The sea, the wind, even the air seemed to pause. My mother flinched, but didn't say a word. Then it happened. His fist hit my cheek, quick, hard, a punch meant to end a conversation. I didn't fall back. I just looked at him, calm and steady, while his rage filled the silence. Because what he didn't know was that I already owned everything behind that door. I straightened my coat and said quietly, "You're right, it's not my house." I started walking away, "But it's not yours either." He muttered insults behind me, but I didn't care. I wasn't angry. I was clear. By the time I reached the road, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years. Daniel Chen. The motel smelled like salt water and old sheets. I held an ice pack against my cheek, waiting for the bruise to reveal itself. The ache pulsed, steady and sharp. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had guarded all these years. Receipts, tax bills, wire transfers. Proof of everything I'd paid to keep the workshop alive. At the bottom was the original deed, tucked inside a plastic sleeve. The clause I added at 19 years old was still there. The property shall be used solely for handcrafted marine craft. Any attempt to mass produce or sell prefabricated vessels constitutes immediate violation. Carl had no idea this clause existed. He didn't understand that the fine print could burn everything he tried to steal. When Daniel picked up, his voice was older, raspier, but still calm. He said, "Adrian, I wondered when you'd call." I told him, "They're trying to sell the workshop." He hit me today, told me it wasn't my home anymore. A long pause, then a slow breath. "Do you still have the original deed?" "Yes, every page." "Good," he said. "We start with that. I'll file an emergency injunction first thing in the morning. Carl never checks details. If this clause holds, we can freeze everything. Accounts, equipment, sales. He won't be able to move a nail without a judge's approval." After the call, I grabbed the motel notepad and wrote down everything Carl had done. The forged papers, the fake sales, the punch, my mother's silence. Not a diary, evidence. Around 2 a.m., I drove to the waterfront. The workshop lights were still on. Through the dusty windows, I saw Carl pacing with his phone, the cheap Rourke Marine Design banner drooping behind him. He was already trying to unload my father's legacy. I gripped the steering wheel and whispered, "Go ahead. Try to sell it. I dare you." Then I drove back to the motel, slid the deed under my pillow, and finally let myself rest. I wasn't just my father's daughter anymore. I was his last line of defense. And in the morning, the storm would begin. The next day was cold and bright, the kind of cold that cuts through layers. I stood outside the courthouse with Daniel Chen, my father's closest friend. His silver hair stirred in the wind, and he held a thick folder, the kind that could end a man's career. "You ready?" he asked. I'd been ready for 11 years. We drove to the workshop, a sheriff's cruiser right behind us. The injunction had already been approved. He just didn't know it yet. The sky was a heavy pewter color when we pulled in. The yard was a disaster. Scrap wood, beer cans, the original Mercer Marine Company sign lying face down in the dirt. Inside, loud music and machine noise filled the space. The scent was chemical, resin and oil, not a hint of cedar. Carl stood near the main workbench, beer in hand, watching two men load fiberglass holes onto a trailer. He gave me a slow, smug smile. "Well, look who brought backup. You sure you belong here? Thought you abandoned this family." "I didn't abandon anything. I invested." Daniel spoke calmly. "Mr. Rourke, the court has issued a temporary injunction. All operations, sales, and transfers stop immediately." Carl's face hardened. "You're joking. Evelyn signed everything to me." Daniel opened his folder.
She never signed the second loan. You forged her name. The bank flagged it, and then you attempted to forge Adrian's. That's wire fraud. Carl's face hardened. You can't prove that. I stepped forward. Yes, I can. I placed the bead on the workbench. My father's signature glowed beneath the plastic. This clause, I said, tapping it, states this place must produce handcrafted boats only, not fiberglass kits, not mass-produced junk. Every sale you sold under Mercer violates it. Every sale is fraud. He stared at the paper like it burned. You wouldn't take this to court, he growled. I already did. His face drained of color. He lunged, but the sheriff blocked him instantly. Mr. Rourke, I'd stand still if I were you. Carl snapped, Move. Not up to me. Court order says we freeze assets today.
My mother appeared in the doorway, robe half-tied, shaking. Evelyn, Carl shouted, tell them. Tell her she has no right. Her voice trembled. Carl, stop. Stop. They're stealing everything. She broke, finally. You stole first. Silence. Heavy. Final. Carl shoved a box off the table, papers scattering everywhere. You think you can ruin me? Daniel shook his head. You ruined yourself. The sheriff stepped forward. Carl Rourke, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. For a second, I thought he'd swing again, but eventually his shoulders sagged. You'll regret this, he spat as the cuffs clicked shut. I regretted it for 11 years, I said. As he was led away, I called after the sheriff. Make sure those fiberglass hulls are impounded. They're evidence. Carl shouted through the window, but I couldn't hear a word. When the cruiser disappeared, the workshop fell quiet. My mother stood there, shaking. I didn't know, she whispered. He told me it was business, that he'd make your father proud. I held her gaze. Dad didn't build this place for business. He built it for integrity. She crumbled, tears in her eyes. I was lonely, Adrian. I know, I said gently. But loneliness doesn't excuse destroying someone's legacy. Daniel cleared his throat. The injunction is solid. We begin the audit tomorrow. I nodded and walked into the workshop. Under the fresh layers of dust and cheap paint, I could still smell something faint, cedar and sea air. I knelt and touched the floorboards. My father's initials were still carved near the corner. We did it, Dad, I whispered. Then I stood up and said, we're restoring everything. No more banners, no more fake brands, just Mercer. My mother looked around. You think you can fix all this? I don't need to fix it, I said quietly. I just need to rebuild. As the last light of the day crossed the floor, I saw my reflection in the window. For the first time in years, I didn't look like someone running. I looked like someone returning. Carl's arrest wasn't revenge. The rebuilding was justice. My father's name survived because I refused to let greed erase him. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who betray you, but you still have the power to take back what's yours. If your own family ever betrayed you, tell me, what did you do next? Did you walk away or fight back? Share your story below. I read everyone. And when you finish this video, don't stop here. Watch the next stories about betrayal, quiet revenge, and rebuilding after loss. You might find a piece of your own journey waiting there.